Recording in progress.
Hey, Sandy, are you ready? I'm gonna have Donna
Yes.
come up to the front and then do the intro for us, okay?
Okay.
Welcome to today's webinar hosted by eLotus and sponsored by Evergreen Herbs. We are proud to be your source for quality CEU content. Having provided educational courses for over 2 decades, our goal is to help you elevate your knowledge and expand your skill set. With over 250 speakers, 900 courses, and 3,500 hours of continuing education, we are committed to providing you with the best educational experience possible. I'm Donna Chow, your host and your moderator, and I'm thrilled to be guiding you through this session. Today's class is the easy way to add herbs to your clinic and presented by Dr. Sandy Schwartz. This class will run from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific time, and we will have one break right in the middle. So before we get started, let me highlight some important Zoom features. Firstly, we have the chat room. It is an excellent tool to connect with your fellow colleagues, and I encourage you to go ahead and set your chat preference to everyone right now to make the chat more inclusive. Secondly, the Q&A box is where you can ask your questions to our speaker. Please do limit your questions to relevant topics to keep the session organized and efficient. Lastly, for those who qualify, the CEU quiz will be available the following workday, and I'll send you an email when it's ready. Our speaker today is Dr. Sandy Schwartz, a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine and author of the Acupuncture Business Success book and owner of Renewed Health LLC in Round Rock, Texas. With a bachelor's of business degree and extensive experience as a software engineer, she recognized the need to bridge the gap between healing skills and business acumen for new acupuncturists. Through her book and clinic, she shares decades of insights to help practitioners not only establish, but also profitably grow their acupuncture practices. Let's dive into today's session and learn something new. Dr. Schwartz, we're excited to see what you have in store for us, and we invite you to share your PowerPoint with us. Let's get started.
Hi, Donna. Thank you for the introduction. I am waiting to see my notes.
Okay, Dr. Shore, can you share your PowerPoint?
Okay. Okay, can you see it?
We see your the PowerPoint notes. So what we do, you do is stop the
Yep.
share again,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, I need to share it. Okay.
yeah, just stop the we're now sharing your note and everything. So I
Can
think
you
still
see
showing
it?
your no, we still seeing your note.
Okay.
I think we should do is end the slideshow on this screen. I think on the top right there, yeah. And then
Okay.
try it again. Yeah, that look good. Now you can turn on your the presenter view.
Okay. Got it.
Looking good.
Okay. All look good?
Yep.
Okay. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to talk about the easy way to add herbs to your clinic. So I'm Dr. Sandy Schwartz. I have a master's of acupuncture and oriental medicine and a doctorate of acupuncture and oriental medicine from AOMA Dental School in Austin, Texas. I'm also a diplomate of oriental medicine through the NCCOM, and I've owned my clinic in Round Rock for over 15 years. Today's topics are, first I'm going to go through, should you even be selling herbs? Talk about what aspects you have to think about before you do that. And once you decide to sell herbs, how do you sell herbs? We're going to talk about the different forms of herbs and also the pros and cons of each form of herb. Then I'm going to show you how to set up your pharmacy in-house if you've decided to do that. But I'll also be showing you some other options on how to sell herbs without doing that. I'm going to show you how to choose your vendors. Then I'm going to go through some base formulas that you can keep in your pharmacy and why those base formulas are important to you. Then I'm going to go over some patent collection formulas that Evergreen puts out that I like to keep in my pharmacy, and I'll tell you why I like to keep them. Then we're going to go over some single herbs to keep in your pharmacy for putting together custom formulas. And then lastly, we'll go over a few things about inventory control and herbal safety. So should I sell herbs in my practice? So after years of herbal training in school, most practitioners are still unsure of using herbs in their practices, especially in building custom formulas. Now, when you're in school, you've got all the formulas, you've got all the herbs, all the patents you need. You can just pick and choose whatever you like. But when you've got your own business or you're working for someone else, you don't have all of those choices. I have a confession to make. I am not an herbal expert. I can't remember formulas. I have to check my notes every time I build a formula. So when I was asked to teach this class by Lotus, I told them that I may not be the right person to teach this class because I'm not an herbal expert. I told them what I did to build my formulas, the tools that I use, and then I said, and then they said, you are exactly who we need to teach this class because I'm doing it real world and the way most acupuncturists would actually do it in their practice because nobody's an expert. I'm also going to show you a tool that I use in my practice to help me remember herbs. So I'm going to introduce that today. And it's what I use to remember my herbs and to build my custom formulas. And I've been using it for most days for over 15 years. In this class, I'll also show you some resources, some tips and tricks to picking the right herbs for your clinic. I'll show you how to build custom formulas. And then most importantly, I'm going to show you some tools for remembering your herbal knowledge. Should I sell herbs in my practice? Should it be now? Should it be later? Or should it be never? So you should do it now if you want to make sure you don't forget your herbal knowledge. You can always add it later if you feel like, well, when I have the money to do it, I'll do it later. Or maybe I'll do it at another time when I feel like I'm more ready for it and gotten through the opening of the practice. You can always wait to do it later because there's other ways to build formulas that are cheaper than adding an in-house pharmacy. So we'll go over both of those options. Now there's also never. Now, not everyone going to acupuncture school gets an herbal degree. So if you don't have an herbal degree, of course you wouldn't want to add an herbal clinic, and you probably wouldn't even be listening to this class. Or you can choose never if you've just decided acupuncture is my thing, herbs aren't, and I am just going to focus on the acupuncture part of the business. You can also do that. If you are ever going to sell herbs in your clinic, I highly recommend adding herbal therapy to your practice right now. Because as I say to all my patients, Oriental medicine works best when using acupuncture and herbs together. But you don't have to have an herb room to provide herbs to your patients. So we're going to go over those options. How do I sell herbs? So there's different ways to sell your herbs. One, you can buy herbs from your herbal vendor, and some vendors allow you to drop ship them directly to your patients. So we'll talk about how that's done. We're going to talk about special orders. That's kind of the same as drop shipping, but you order your herbs from your herbal vendor, they're delivered to your clinic, and then you sell them to your patients in that way. Or you can always keep an in-house herbal inventory. Let's talk about each one of those. The first option is to drop ship the herbs. So if you can't afford the cost of having an herbal inventory, you do have the option with certain vendors of selecting patents, or you can also create custom powdered prescriptions for your patients that then they can be just drop shipped to those patients. The advantages of this is you can still create custom formulas, and that way you don't forget your herbal knowledge. And your patients get your herbal formulas without you having to have an herbal inventory. The disadvantage is that it can be more expensive to the patient. You don't make any kind of profit on the herbs, and it takes longer for the patient to get the herbs from the vendor. This is probably the most important part, is when you're giving out herbs, you really want your patients to get them as fast as possible. And this option delays it. The second option is to use special orders. So special orders can be used whether you have an herbal inventory on site or not. And I'm going to go over each one of these. So even if you do have an herbal inventory, it's impossible to carry every single herbal formula you could ever think you would use. So a special order is simply, it's an herbal formula that you don't usually carry, but you order it special for a specific patient and it's delivered to the clinic. Then when the patient special orders the herb, they are paid for by the patient at that time. That way, if the patient never comes to pick up the herbs, you're not literally stuck holding the bag and the cost of the herb. You want to keep an inventory the formulas that you sell the most based on the diseases that you treat, and then you special order the rest. The third option is keeping an in-house pharmacy. Now, setting up inventory on site has a huge upfront expense. It can go anywhere from smaller to being maybe a few $100s to going bigger to being a few $1,000s. If you can manage the cost, I recommend having an herbal inventory on site because first, you'll be helping your patients more by adding herbal medicine to their treatment plan. And second, you're going to sell more herbs. Third, your patient will get the herbs they need immediately. And this is very important. They need to get them immediately. It'll be cheaper for the patient, and your business will make a really nice profit from it. And also, you remember your herbal knowledge by using herbs every day in your clinic. The cons are that it is expensive starting out. It can cost, like I said, hundreds or thousands to keep those herbs in-house. And it does require more space to keep herbs in-house. Okay, so I'm going to go over the different forms of herbs. So herbal products come in many different kinds of forms, from sticks and leaves to pills, and they're usually purchased from an herbal vendor. You can buy single herbs, which are one variety of the plant, or you can buy a formula, which are several single herbs combined for a specific purpose. The most popular herbal forms are, first is raw. These are your sticks and leaves and minerals and roots and even animal parts, and they're broken down into small pieces. Raw herbs are only sold as single herbs, not as formulas. They usually come from the vendor in plastic bags that are 1 to 1.5 pounds, which you will then pour into a large jar for storage once you receive them. When dispensing the herb to the patient, the practitioner will weigh out each individual herb of the formula, place them in a paper bag, which constitutes a custom formula. The formula is given to the patient along with cooking instructions. The next form is powdered herbs. These are processed raw herbs. They come in the form of either raw powders or concentrated extracts. And those are in a powder or granular form. So for the rest of the class, when I refer to powdered herbs, I'm referring to all three types: the raw powders, the concentrated powders, or the concentrated granule. So just know that. Both single herbs and herbal formulas come in powdered form. Generally, herbal extracts are more concentrated than the raw form, so less is needed of the extract to get the same clinical effectiveness as a larger amount of raw herbs. Powdered herbs are mixed into a custom formula by the practitioner before being given to the patient. The next form is patents. These herbs are prepared formulas that come in some kind of pill form, such as a tablet, a tea pill, or a capsule. They're delivered to the patient in small bottles. Tinctures are next. These herbs are concentrated extractions of raw herbal formulas, and they're in a liquid form. They're usually in an alcohol or a glycerin base, and they come in a bottle, ready to be taken. Lastly, there are topicals. These herbs are medicines that are used externally, typically, and they're not ingested. They're generally used for dermatological types of conditions or for pain. They come in many different forms, such as liniments, tinctures, washes, ointments, salves, plasters, sticks, and oils. So of all of these forms of herbs, the raw and the powdered herbs are customizable, but they must be mixed by the practitioner. The patents, tinctures, and topicals are not customizable and are generally manufactured for a specific condition, a disease, or a diagnosis. So the next thing to consider for these herbal forms is the advantages and disadvantages in prescribing these different forms, both for the patient and for your business. Let's go over those. So for raw herbs, the biggest advantage of these herbs for the patient is they're more natural and they're least processed. They are customizable, so that's a big advantage. They may be less expensive, and I'll talk about when they're not. And they come in a liquid form so that it's easier to swallow. So that's after the patient cooks the herbs, then they're in that liquid form. So there are also disadvantages for the patient in taking raw herbs. One is the generally unpleasant taste, which can sometimes result in poor patient compliance in taking the herbs. It also takes more time and effort for the patient to prepare the raw herbs at home. And preparation can often be complicated, as some herbs need to be cooked longer, some are added to the pot last, or they need to be crushed. So let's talk about the business advantages and disadvantages of raw herbs. The biggest advantage for using raw herbs for the clinic is that it provides the most natural form of herbs to the patient. So some patients are very much into all natural, and this is the most natural. They are customizable. They may be less expensive. And it's also an option for patients that have trouble swallowing. And there are some disadvantages for the practitioner in using raw herbs. First of all, it takes you longer to mix due to the larger quantities. Also, special cooking instructions are needed to be provided to the patient. The herbs will also expire the quickest, so there may be more waste, and they take more shelf space. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of powdered herbs. The advantages to the patient are they're easier to prepare than raw herbs, but you're still maintaining the strength and the ability to customize of a raw formula. Patients just need to have access to warm water to prepare the herbs, which means they're more portable, easier to carry. Also, since these herbs are taken in a liquid form, they are easier to take for patients that have swallowing issues. There's also some disadvantages for the patient. The biggest disadvantages is that, like raw herbs, they taste unpleasant. Also, powdered herbs may contain fillers, and patients may be allergic to those fillers. Also, it takes a little bit longer to prepare the powdered herbs compared to patent herbs. Lastly, depending on your markup, powdered herbs may be more expensive to the patient than raw or patent herbs, and I'll go over the differences there. On the other hand, if the patient requires more than one patent herb, say you're treating multiple conditions, then it may be cheaper to treat the multiple conditions with just one custom powdered formula. That is the instance where it would actually be cheaper than giving them two patent herbs, which would be more expensive. Let's go over advantages to the clinic. First, powdered herbs are faster and easier for the practitioner to mix. They're faster than mixing raw herbs. To make the mixing process even faster and easier, you can buy pre-mixed formulas in a powdered form, and then you can use them as your base for your formula, and then add other single herbs in the powdered form as needed. So I'm going to show you what some of these bases are that I use. Another advantage for the business is that the powdered herbs take up less space than raw herbs to store. Also, they may have a longer shelf life than raw herbs, meaning less is thrown out at the end of the year. Now, there are some disadvantages also. First of all, it takes longer to formulate and mix the powdered herbs than to simply hand the patient a patent herb. So there is mixing time. Also, mixing of powdered herbs does require extra supplies, such as a scale, plastic bottles and caps, measuring spoons, funnels, and you need to have a label maker and labels. Luckily, from Evergreen, you can buy the plastic bottles and the caps and the measuring spoons from Evergreen. Let's review the patent herbs. So for the patient, the advantages of using a patent herb are they're easier to take because they don't require any kind of preparation. It's easier for patients to carry with them, which will assure better patient compliance in taking their herbs, hopefully. This can be the cheapest option for patients if only one condition is being treated. Now, for the patient, there are also some disadvantages. One, the patent herbs are not customizable. When getting a patent herb, the patient may not get exactly what they need, but they'll get the formula that the practitioner has on hand that comes closest to meeting that need. Also, patent herbs may not be as strong as powdered or raw herbs, making it necessary to take a larger dose. There may also be fillers used in the processing of the patent herb that the patient may be allergic to, so you need to check on that. Lastly, patent herbs may be harder to swallow, especially if they're having trouble since they have to take many pills within a day, it may be hard for them to swallow. As for the business side of things, the advantages are they are faster and easier to prescribe. Just grab and go. Just grab them from the shelf, write the dosage. I write the dosage on the top of the bottle and give it to the patient. In addition, patents are probably the easiest to sell because most people are just used to taking pills. In Western medicine, everyone's got pills. So they're used to taking pills, so give them a pill. Also, patent herbs take up less shelf space than raw or powdered herbs. There's a few disadvantages to selling patents for your business. Some brands of patent herbs are more expensive than other brands. So be careful when you're choosing your herbs to compare the vendors. And you got to make sure you choose brands that fit the patient's budget. So whenever you are prescribing herbs, you got to be careful about how much are you going to give. You can't just give them 4 bottles of herbs. It costs too much, and it's some of these pill forms are kind of big, and you got to take 4 3 times a day, and it just gets to be too much. So you got to keep the patient's budget in mind when you're giving any kind of herb. So the patent herbs are generally cheaper than raw or powdered herbs, but if 2 or more patent herbs are prescribed to the patient, that's when it can become more expensive. Tinctured herbs. There's several advantages for the patient. First of all, the tinctures are easier to take because they're in a liquid form. For patients with swallowing issues and for children, there's many children tincture lines. It may be easier to swallow a tincture than to take it in a pill form. The tincture formulas can be stronger than a patent formula, and they may be less expensive than powders. Also, they come in a bottle, so they're easily portable. Patients can easily carry tinctures with them, and they don't have to mix them with anything. There are disadvantages of tinctures for the patient. Just like the raw and the powder herbs, they usually taste bad. But the amount of the tincture used is smaller than in a raw or powdered form. It can either be added to a little bit of water, or some may be taken sublingually. So the taste may not be quite as bad. Also, as with patent herbs, tinctures are already processed, so there's no customization to the patent, to the patient. So for your business, there are some advantages to selling tinctures. Since, as with patent herbs, you purchase tinctures already prepared, they're much more convenient for you to give to the patient. They're going to require less storage space than raw or powdered herbs. The biggest advantage of selling tinctures is that you can have a stronger formula that's already prepared. So the herb may be able to do its job more quickly for the patient and perhaps reduce the cost to the patient. The disadvantages for the practitioner is that it tastes bad to the patient, and it tastes bad without being customizable. Topical herbs. The major advantage of topical herbs to the patient. They provide the patient a natural solution for skin or pain conditions, and that can easily be applied to the skin. The options are readily available for specific skin conditions, such as psoriasis, eczema, shingles, hemorrhoids, just to name a few. There are some disadvantages to using topicals. One is that their herbal bill may get too expensive if they're buying both an internal formula and the external topical formula. So you got to be careful with that. The patient's got to be able to afford the herbs. Another disadvantage is that natural topicals tend to smell bad. That means they smell worse than some over-the-counters you can just get at the drugstore. There's also some advantages to selling topicals for your business. One, topicals are easy to sell because there's no preparation involved, and they're easily provided to the patient. The biggest advantage of selling topical herbs is that it's a really good way to upsell to your client. If they're having dermatological issues, you can heal them faster by selling not only a topical, but also an internal herbal formula. And they also take up less shelf space. There's some disadvantages for the practitioner for using topical herbs. One, they're not customizable. And be aware that if you don't treat skin conditions very often, then including topicals in your inventory, it can be a disadvantage to the business as they may sell very slowly. And you also have to remember that you have those topicals in your inventory because you're the one that's selling them to the patient. All right. So this is a chart. It shows the differences between all of the herbal forms that we just discussed. We're going to go over, there's the herb type, the strength of the herb. Is the herb customizable? Is the herb easy to prepare for the business? Is it easy to prepare for the patient? And how much space does it require? The raw and the powdered herbs, they may be the strongest. The raw and the powdered herbs are the only ones that are customizable. The patents, tinctures, and topicals, they are pre-prepared and don't require any kind of preparation by the patient. And all of the forms except the raw take up less shelf space. The raw form takes up the most shelf space. Now that you've reviewed all of the herbal forms, which ones do you think you'd want to use for your clinic? If you want to have custom formulas, then you need to choose either raw or powdered. If you want pre-prepared formulas, then you're going to need patents or tinctures. And you can use topicals if you treat a lot of skin diseases or if you treat a lot of pain. So figure out what kind of herb you want to use. Before we start picking our herbs for our pharmacy, let's review a few things that have to do with how do you set up your herbal room without talking about the herbs. What other things are needed to set up your herb room? So here are some things needed for setting up your herb room. Here's some herb room requirements. So you'll need at least an area for storage of herbs and handling of herbs, which means mixing them, putting them into the bags and so forth. Since you must wash your hands before and after working with herbs, just as like you wash your hands before and after treating each patient, the herb room should have a sink in it, separate from your bathroom. You need a separate sink for washing your hands. The last thing you need to do is be 10 minutes late getting to a patient because you had to run down the hall to the bathroom to wash your hands. So make sure you've got a sink in the herb room. This room may also be your break room. If it is, then you'll need probably a small refrigerator, maybe a microwave. It may also be a space for storage of different kind of supplies, such as your paper supplies. So when I first started out, I had 2 rooms and I had a shared waiting room. So one room was used for treating the patient. And then my other room was a combo that I used for the office, the herb room, the break room, the storage room. Those were all in one room. So it can be done with just 2 rooms and a small waiting room. So most importantly, you want your herb room to be organized and you want it to be neat. Herbs need to be organized so that you can find them quickly and move smoothly to the area where they are going to be mixed. So I use powders, I don't use raw. And I choose to put my powdered herb, my single herbs in alphabetical order versus many different kinds of herbs, like in your school, probably put them in the the category that they're in. Well, I can't find them through the category, so I put them in alphabetical order so I can find it easiest that way. Since you're dealing with herbs, things that the patient has got to consume, cleanliness is very important. You also need to be very alert to any kind of possible sources of contamination in your herb room. Even though your patients will probably never enter this room, it needs to be clean. So what belongs in the herb room? Obviously, the main thing is your herbal inventory. But there's other non-herbal items that belong in the herb room. And we're going to talk about those to get your herb room set up and to mix herbs. So one requirement we talked about already is the sink in the herb room. It can be a small sink, such as a residential bar sink. It doesn't have to be a full sink. Make sure you have a paper towel holder with paper towels in it, as well as a sponge and some kind of soap container filled with soap. Next, you'll need a large herb preparation table, which may also be a break table if you can add a stool in it underneath it, a high stool. I recommend a sturdy white or stainless steel table. You want it to be at least 4 feet long, and you want it to be counter height because you're probably going to be mixing herbs standing up versus sitting down. I got my 4-foot table from IKEA. It's sturdy, it's cheap, looks good. You're also going to have some shelves to store the herbs and your other inventory items. So depending on how many different types of herbs you plan to sell and the size of your inventory, you're probably going to need at least 1 to 2 tall shelves to store your inventory items. I got my shelves for my inventory. I've got one for raw herbs. Not for raw. I've got one for my single herbs. And then my other shelf carries my base custom formulas in powder form and all of my pill forms of herbs. So these are about 4 feet wide and about 6 feet tall. I got my white cabinets from IKEA also. Good price, sturdy furniture. And then you also have to have herbal mixing supplies. Most of the mixing supplies come with the powdered herbs, but there's a few things that have to have in the herbal room for your raw herbs if you use raw herbs. So what is needed to dispense your herbs? You're going to need certain supplies and mixing supplies you're going to need depending on what kind of herb you have. And they're listed in this chart. So let's start at the left. For dispensing patent herbs, tinctures, and topical herbs, you need the least amount of things to dispense them. You need either a black fine point permanent marker, or you need a label machine and a label to stick on the bottle to put the dosage on. I use the black fine point permanent marker. I write the dosage on the bottle, such as 4,3x for 4 pills 3 times a day. The first time I give herbs out to my patient, I tell them this is what's written on the bottle and this is what it means, so that they know what their dosage is. So next is the raw herbs. What do you need for raw herbs to dispense them? So you're going to need a digital gram scale. The scale should have a reset or a 0 button on it. That way you can easily reset the display to 0 once you measure an herb and put it in a mixing bowl and then move it off to the plastic sheet. You're also going to need several small stainless steel mixing bowls. 8.5 by 11 laminated plastic sheet. So when mixing the raw herbs, you're going to weigh each herb in a steel bowl. And then once you have the right amount, you're going to dump the bowl onto the laminated sheet to make room for the next herb in the bowl. Once all of the herbs for the formula that you're mixing are on the plastic sheet, the sheet can be folded lengthwise, and that way it makes it easier to pour it into a paper bag. So each bag, once it's prepared, generally makes enough liquid to provide dosages for the herbs for 1 to 2 days. You're going to need a prescription label for each raw herb bag. And you're also going to need a safety instruction sheet, which I'm going to show you more on that below. That it includes the cooking instructions for the raw herbs, which needs to be given to the patient with the herbs so that they know how to cook them and put them together and when to take them. Lastly, we've got what's needed for mixing and dispersing powdered herbs. You're going to need most of the items that we talked about with the raw formula, except instead of having the plastic laminated sheet, you're going to have a funnel instead. So you will also need a metal spoon. I use it sometimes to control the flow of the powdered herbs so that you make sure they're not, if you're just trying to put them in, you're not dumping too much at a time. You're also going to need bottles with caps for dispensing the powdered herbs. And you're going to need the small plastic gram measuring spoons to give to your patient with each bottle of herbs so that they can measure the powder out and mix it with the hot water when they're preparing them at home. You're also going to need a prescription label for each bottle, which is going to be similar to the one used for the raw herbs. The bottle of herbs and a plastic gram measuring spoon should be placed into your paper bag. And the safety instruction sheet that includes the cooking instructions for the powdered herb, that should also be included with the bag, in the bag. How do you choose your vendors? So to find herbal vendors that you want to work with, you're going to first need to check out several herbal vendors' websites that you like, and find the area on the website that outlines their herbal quality control and their manufacturing process. So first you'll want to know if the herbal vendor buys the highest quality raw herbs. So you want to get the answers to these kinds of questions. One, do the growers use good agricultural practices? And that's where the water and the soil are tested routinely to determine if they're free from any kind of contamination. Are the herbs indigenous to the region? So that way you want to make sure you're getting the best results. Are the herbs tracked from the seed origin through planting, through maturation, to harvesting, and through processing? Are the herbs laboratory tested to confirm their authenticity, to ensure that the active ingredients are in the proper medicinal potencies? And you also want to check for safety, checking to see if there's any molds, yeast, heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, or any other kind of pollutants or bacteria in the formula. Next, the herbal vendor should also follow good manufacturing practices, or GMP, standards and guidelines that are set forth by the World Health Organization and the United States Food and Drug Administration. So the GMP certification ensures that the vendor's production methods have been investigated and determined to be in compliance by the government agency or through a qualified third-party organization. This will ensure that the vendor's extraction and granulation processes meet the purity, safety, potency, and the clinical efficacy standards. So I trust Evergreen. I do. I trust Evergreen for powdered and patent herbs, and I also get my dispensing supplies from them. So Evergreen carries their own proprietary formulas. They're in powdered and capsule forms. They're also described in a really great practitioner's guide, and that helps with matching the herbal formulas by the disease of the patient or the Oriental medicine diagnosis that you give the patient. The guide also gives you information on commonly used acupuncture points, lifestyle recommendations, clinical research for the disease that's being treated. Those are all in the book. Now, when I was in school, I saw the book in the herb room. I didn't really look at it much, which I wish I did, because it would have helped me so much. But after I started my practice and I started ordering evergreen herbs, that's when I got the book and I started reading it, and there is so much knowledge in there. I recommend everybody get this book. It's not only information on herbs, but you got points in there to use, different kinds of points, ear points, master tongue points. So even if you don't do herbs, I'd recommend getting that book for that. So the company also carries classic formulas in powdered and capsule forms. They sell single herbs in powdered forms. They sell books, powdered herb dispensing supplies, such as the plastic bottles, the caps, and the spoons. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. All right. So when you're buying your herbs, make sure your vendor has your license information so that you can get the wholesale pricing on the herbs. You want to check the pricing and you want to calculate what your retail price is going to be to ensure that not only do you get a good markup on your sale, but it's still affordable to your patients. If the herbs are not affordable to your patients, then they're not going to buy them. I generally price all of my non-powdered herbal products, so my patent products, I mark them up with a 30% markup. And on my powdered herbs, I usually give the markup that the school that I came from, the same amount that they price per gram. All right, so here are some resources for building your initial inventory. There's a bunch of resources out there. Here are several books that discuss the most common herb formulas and the most common patent formulas. 3 books that I use the most and that I would recommend are the 70 Essential Chinese Herbal Formulas, and that's by Bob Flaws. There's also the Chinese Herbal Patent Medicines by Jake Paul Fratkin, and the Clinical Manual of Chinese Herbal Patent Medicines by Will McLean. So these books allow you to review an extensive list of formulas and patents, and that way you can pick the ones that most fit the diseases that you treat. One way to get started building your inventory is to also consider purchasing 1 or more starter kits that are available from some vendors. This allows you to build up a small inventory with some of the most commonly prescribed herbs at a reduced price. They usually give you a discount. However, you don't always, depending on the vendor, you don't always have a choice of which herbs come in these kits. So before you buy an herbal starter kit, make sure that all of the herbs in the kit are ones that you can sell and the ones that treat the diseases that you treat. Now, Evergreen has a really good starter kit. You can buy 50 bottles and you can mix and match them between single herbs or formulas, or you can so you can mix them between the powdered herbs, and that's single or formula powders, or you can buy them in the encapsulated powdered form, so the patents and formulas. The starter kit gives you a 20% discount, which is really good. And they're going to give you some free herbal mixing supplies with that also. So go to evherbs.com, click on specials, and then click on starter kit herbal pharmacy special. And that's where you'll see how you can get into the special. So that's a really good deal. Evergreen also has a really great pain line. I stock most of them because I treat a lot of pain. Another bit of advice to consider before you start building your herbal pharmacy is start out small and then build from there. For powders, start with a few powdered formulas that can be used as a base for building your custom formulas. And again, it's depending on what you treat. Next, you can select a few single powders from each herbal category, and I'm going to help you with that. You can also look for those single herbs that have multiple functions, and again, that best fit the diseases that you treat. For patent herbs, if you're going to start with those, start out by ordering only 1 or 2 bottles of the patent formulas that you choose to use. Once you find out what products you sell the most, then you can adjust and expand your inventory. Another cost saver. If you order at least $120 of herbs from Evergreen, then you're going to get free shipping. You want to look for that free shipping from your vendors and find out what that limit is. I never pay for shipping. Okay, we're going to have a break, but I'm going to go through some questions first. I'm not seeing any questions. Anybody got any questions? Or am I just not seeing them? Going once, going twice. Okay, guys. All right. I see that we're good. Okay, we're going to have a 15-minute break. So be back here in 15 minutes. Maybe Donna can help me out. I can't see what time it is. So if you can let them know when 15 minutes is up, we'll be back here. All right. Okay. See you guys in a little bit.
Recording stopped.